This is the brand new iPhone SE from Apple. It looks like an iPhone 8, runs like an iPhone 11, 11 Pro, but costs $399. Yeah, there's a lot to like about this phone. There are a lot of different ways you can look at the iPhone SE from Apple. That it's a more affordable option than the iPhone 11, which it is. That it's a sequel to the original iPhone SE in 2016, which it is. That it's the smallest iPhone you can currently buy, which it is. Or that it is an iPhone 8 with the brains of an iPhone 11 that offers literally better improvements to everything you do on the phone. The new iPhone SE is all of these things, which is why I'm enamored with it. Hey, this phone looks like a classic iPhone. It's got the forehead, it's got the chin, the home button, but it's the inside. It's that processor that got brought over from the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max that not only makes it run faster, not only brings over new features, but also future-proofs it, meaning this phone will be able to support iOS updates for years. If anything, the iPhone SE is a showcase for just how powerful Apple's A13 Bionic chip really is. Now, you don't get a $399 iPhone without there being some compromises. And I really do believe that Apple made smart compromises to get this to be a budget phone. But it only has a single rear camera. It doesn't have Face ID and emoji, Memoji, Slofies. It's missing camera features like night mode and deep fusion processing. But you know what? That's fine. In 2017, while reviewing the iPhone 8, my colleague Scott Stein described it as the let's not spend $1,000 on an iPhone. And 2.5 years later, the same could apply to the iPhone SE, with a tweak. It's the let's not spend $700 on an iPhone 11 iPhone. You know what's weird is now if you think about it, Apple now has an iPhone at $50 or $100 increments going from $399 all the way up to $1,449. Let's talk about the design. For all intents and purposes, this is physically an iPhone 8. It has glass in the front and back, has an aluminum chassis and sides, and the only way you can physically tell the difference between the two phones is where the Apple logo is located. On the iPhone SE, it's been moved right into the middle. Probably the biggest thing that got sacrificed to get a $399 price on this iPhone is the lack of cutting-edge design. It looks old. I mean, it looks like an iPhone 6, 6S, 7, or 8. It's not ugly, it's just last year's design from a few years ago. Okay, after being on Face ID models for the past few years, it was a strange and satisfying sensation to set up Touch ID, and I forgot how much I liked the home button. And it seems so much less fussy to navigate and do interactions with it than swipes and holds on the screen. It's fast, it's satisfying to use a button. Even if it's not a real button, it's just haptic vibrations. The new iPhone SE has a 4.7-inch screen. Now, for those of you hoping for the 4-inch screen and body of the old iPhone SE, yeah, I'm sorry. Okay, but aside from the iPhone SE's squared-off corners, the quality of the screen seems equal to that of the iPhone 11. I mean, text is sharp, animations look good, colors seem accurate, and you could see it out in a bright sunny day. The new iPhone SE is rated IP67 for water and dust resistance, which means it could be submerged under 1 meter of water for 30 minutes. Now, I was not able to test this claim, though I did submerge it in 1 liter of water for 30 minutes and everything worked fine. It is highly unusual for a phone that costs less than $400 to have water and dust resistance, and it is particularly noteworthy that the iPhone SE actually includes it. The iPhone SE comes in 3 colors, black, white, and red, which is the one I've been using. Now, I realize the iPhone 8 did have a product red version, but seeing this in person, yeah, it looks so damn good in red, and the black bezels on the front, so this is one of the reasons why I'm a little iffy about the design, because it's an old phone, but it looks pretty good. So let's talk about the biggest thing that makes this not an iPhone 8 II, and that would be the processor. It has an A13 Bionic processor used in the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, 11 Pro Max. Not only does it change what this phone is, it also future-proofs it. So I'm likely to get years longer updates of iOS on the iPhone SE than had I bought an iPhone 8 just a couple months ago. And let's just acknowledge that the longevity with which Apple supports iOS in older devices is quietly one of the most significant appeals of owning an iPhone. So, what does all this performance get you? Well, in performance tests, the new iPhone SE scored higher than the iPhone 8 and, no surprise, the original iPhone SE. It also scored right on par with the iPhone 11, 11 Pro, and 11 Pro Max. In everyday use, it just meant apps were fast and launched quickly. Gaming was a breeze. FaceTime with friends and stickers was no problem. Editing photos was easy, and I even was able to do AR games on an iPhone SE. So yeah, this little guy is no slouch. It's actually pretty impressive. When it comes to battery life, well, things are a bit shocking. So, on Apple's website, they claim the new iPhone SE lasts about the same amount of time as the iPhone 8. Well, that's not true. It lasts much longer. We ran a video test where we play video loop back in airplane mode at 50% brightness, and it lasted 15 hours and 45 minutes. That is hours longer than what the iPhone 8 and the original iPhone SE did when we ran that same test on them when they were brand new. Now look, in everyday use, I got easily a day and a half between charges on the iPhone SE. A couple times, it went 2 whole days without charging. Very impressive. I should note that I have more battery tests to run on the iPhone SE, and that you should check out my review on cnet.com, where I'll update not only the results, but also the battery score for the review. I should mention that the iPhone SE has wireless charging, and this is another feature that you don't see often on budget phones. It also has fast charging, where it can charge the battery 50% in just 30 minutes. However, it doesn't come with the necessary 18-watt charger. Instead, the SE comes with the old 5-watt charger. Hey, look, I get it. Smart compromises. Speaking of which, let's talk about the cameras. So, I thought the best way to look at the cameras on the iPhone SE is to actually compare them to those on the iPhone 11. So let's do a little mini shootout and compare photos and videos from the iPhone 11 versus the iPhone SE. Both the front and rear cameras on the iPhone SE are pretty much the same hardware-wise as they were on the iPhone 8. But they get a huge improvement in image quality as well as functionality because of that A13 processor. Now you get things like Smart HDR for photography, you get the quick take filming button, if you hold the shutter down in the camera app. You also get portrait mode photos both on the rear camera and on the selfie camera. And that is truly a first on any 4.7-inch iPhone. Hey, I should also apologize. You're going to see a lot of me in these photos and videos, and that's just reflective of the times we're in and trying to test a camera that comes out while you're sheltering in place. So let's talk about the cameras on each phone. On the iPhone SE, the rear camera has a 28mm lens with an f1.8 aperture. Compare that to the 2 cameras in the back of the iPhone 11. Its main camera, which has a 26mm lens with an f1.8 aperture, and the ultra-wide angle camera, which has a 13mm lens with an f2.4 aperture. Look, I really like the ultra-wide angle camera on the 11, but I gotta say I didn't really miss not having it on the iPhone SE. In good light, photos from each phone are very similar in terms of image quality. I mean, look at these pictures of a tree I took in my backyard. Can you tell which phone took which picture? Yeah, now you see my point. Yeah, the iPhone SE photo is framed ever so slightly tighter because of that 28mm lens compared to the iPhone 11 with a 26mm lens. But here are a few other photos where things, again, are pretty much identical. Both phones have portrait mode and produce excellent results. The iPhone 11 can do portrait mode photos of people and pets, while the iPhone SE can only do people. The photos look very close, but the iPhone 11's portrait mode captures just a bit more detail. Sorry about this, but if you zoom in and look at my skin, the iPhone 11 photo has a dusting more detail and less noise than the iPhone SE photo. Let's look closely at my shoulder in these photos, and you'll notice that the fall off between in focus and out of focus areas in the photo is a little more naturally rendered in the iPhone 11 than it is in the iPhone SE. Alright, and here's a shot of my bike trainer taken indoors in medium light. The most obvious difference is the framing. Again, it's tighter on the iPhone SE than the iPhone 11. But in terms of image quality, the photo from the iPhone 11, again, it just has a pinch more detail. Like, look at the wall outlet here. And the one from the iPhone SE suffers from some noise in the shadows. That said, this isn't a huge difference in image quality indoors, but the iPhone 11 does have an edge, albeit a very thin edge. The same applies for video. It's nearly impossible to see the difference in terms of image quality. Both phones can shoot 4K 60 frames per second. Both phones have extended dynamic range. However, the SE only goes up to 4K 30 frames per second, whereas the iPhone 11 can get that extended dynamic range at 4K 60 frames per second. Perhaps the place where there is the biggest difference between the iPhone 11 and iPhone SE is the selfie camera. The iPhone 11 has a wider front-facing camera, and it's capable of 4K video and slow-fies. The iPhone SE can only shoot 1080p video and no slow-fies. Both phones have portrait selfie mode, and again, the image quality is just a tad bit better on the iPhone 11. There's just a little bit more detail in those photos. Look, I guess the biggest takeaway from this mini camera shootout is that the iPhone SE can go toe-to-toe with the main cameras on the iPhone 11 and 11 Pro. So to put a bow on this entire review, the iPhone SE has an attractive price, it gets fantastic battery life, it has a great rear camera, it has that bonkers powerful A13 processor, it has water resistance and wireless charging. The iPhone SE is not only a wonderful iPhone, but it is one of the best budget phones that you can buy. Hey, so that's my review for the iPhone SE. If you want to look at more, take a look at cnet.com. My full in-depth review is there. But if you have questions for me, throw them in the comments. I'd love to answer them. But also, I'd love to know, are you getting an SE? Are you considering it? And if so, what are you upgrading from?